There are over 500,000 kids in foster care across the United States, and making sure they're well taken care of takes a village. I'm Erin Lindstrom, and this is Foster Care Aware, a production brought to you by Tidewater Friends of Foster Care with support from the Barry Robinson Center. If you've had it on your heart to become a foster parent, volunteer, donor, advocate, or just want to learn more, you're in the right place. For more information on how to move forward, head to fostercareaware.org/next steps. And now I'm thrilled to share today's segment with you. Hey there, I am Erin Lindstrom, and I am here today with Audra Bullock, the President and Director of Tidewater Friends of Foster Care. And we are joined by Rob McCartney, the CEO of the Barry Robinson Center and a board member of Tidewater Friends of Foster Care. So thank you so much for joining us, Rob.
Well, thanks for having me. This is great.
Absolutely. And also a gigantic thank you so much for being our title sponsor this year for Foster Care Aware. We could not do this without your support, and so we are hugely grateful.
Well, you know, I like to take that personally as a thank you, but this has everything to do with the Barry Robinson Center and our goal to help out in the community where there's a need. And clearly what the mission of Tidewater Friends of Foster Care, there's a big need for being able to help them with their mission. And so we're happy to do it.
Thank you.
It really is. It speaks to the whole, it's a village initiative that we have and how we are all working together, and it's beautiful. So to kick us off, Rob, I would love to hear, and I think our viewers would love to hear a little bit more about you. How did you end up in the social work field, and maybe a little bit about your journey to the Barry Robinson Center and becoming the CEO there?
Well, I've been, as you can tell by my hair, I've been around for a few years, and my journey has been well over 25 years. I think that, you know, I go back to when I initially got into this field. I was actually working as a cafeteria monitor, and a fight broke out, and I broke it up, and I got interested in why one of the boys was fighting, and he was special ed. And that led me to thinking about special ed. And when I started to look at what you had to do to become a teacher and what the process was, I said it wasn't for me. And I sort of got acquainted with social work and got accepted to a master's program, and it fit me very well. And then after I graduated, you know, I was newlywed, I had a little boy and needed a job. And the job that I got offered was at a residential intensive foster care program in northern Michigan. So out in the boonies, a place called Eagle Village. And that was the beginning of my clinical work in working with foster families and foster kids. We actually did a unique program of reunification, right? Everybody talks about it now, but this is back in maybe 70, 78. And what we were doing was getting parents to come up, and we had a lodge, and they were staying in the lodge, and we would start the reunification process. Some kids it went really well, other ones it did not, but they were able to come to that conclusion themselves and separate off. And so since then, I've done a variety of clinical work with teenagers, adults, group, family, residential, acute psych. And so then my story into administration is I was divorced, my two kids. I met a woman, Shirley, who had two girls the same age as my two boys. So we're the Brady Bunch. And Shirley, without Alice. So that's even more important. And you tie into that, we have a teacher, right? Shirley's a teacher, and I'm a social worker. And we all know that that means we make just enough money that nobody's going to get scholarships as far as financial need. And unfortunately, my kids were probably not going to get scholarships based on academics. And my one son, who was a very good athlete, we knew he probably, at 6'10", probably was going to get some money to go someplace, and that's what happened. But when my wife and I were talking about that, she said, as a good Southern woman would do, it says, what are you going to do about it? And so I switched into administration. And my journey at administration has been pretty phenomenal. I've certainly had a little ups and downs, but I've had a lot of ups, and was working for two friends of mine out of Atlanta doing consulting work when the job at the Barry Robinson Center came open, and I was approached by the recruiter. And so I had 4 requirements. if I was going to move. We were living in Charlotte. My wife's teaching. I'm consulting. Life is good. And the requirements were, one, had to be closer to my grandkids. Two, right, had to be back into the working with kids. Three, it had to be in the nonprofit world. And four, it had to be residential. So I felt pretty confident we were not leaving Charlotte. And so when the recruiter called me and I was saying, I'm not interested. And she said, well, Rob, it meets all your requirements. And I paused. As closer to my grandkids. Well, I'm 10 minutes from my grandkids now, right?
Amazing.
Right? We're back working with kids, the Barry Robinson Center. You know, back a nonprofit, the Barry Robinson Center, and residential. So I called my brother that night and I said, Dave, what am I going to do? And he's my older brother and we're very close. And he said, I'm confused. Isn't this what you've been praying for? And I go, yes. And he goes, well, you better take it. And some other medical issues had happened several years before that in some ways I probably shouldn't be around here, but I am. And I realized when I got to the center that this is why God had kept me alive. I'll try not to tear up too much on this one. When I took over, the center we had our foster care program, we had intensive outpatient, we had a transitional living program, and as well as residential. And we were really struggling at that point from a business model. And we can get into, it's a great business story at some point. You have to come back on and talk with folks about it. But one of the things that's happened over the last 7 years, I'll be 8 years in August that I've been there, is that we have a good financial bottom line right now for the center. And we've also, foster care has been one of our service lines that has always been pretty steady. Unfortunately though, about maybe 3 years ago, I was not happy with foster care. I was not happy with some things that were going on for us. I didn't see it as our core business. And I really thought about closing it down. And I talked with Nancy Holcomb, who was the interim director of foster care, and Ashley Jackson, who you guys have already interviewed. And they said, no, Rob, let us take care of it. Give us a year and a half, and we'll get it cleaned up. And they did. And so I was very pleased with what happened. We have a very robust foster care program now. We've gone from 9 parents up to 21. We went from, I think, having 15 beds to 43 beds.
Wow.
We went from having a staff of 3 to a staff of 7. We engaged with Attach, and I got to know Mary McCowan very well, and we supported them when they had their conference here a couple years ago. One of my board members, Chuck McPhillips, introduced me to Audra, and so I went out to say hi to her, and by the time I left, I was on the board. And I really believed in the mission of what they're doing, and the whole idea of teaching kids to read and the tutoring program with that. I tell people residential, if you can do one thing only, if I only had one thing kids could improve on, it would be in reading. Because if you can't read, you're not going to be successful. In addition to Tidewater Friends of Foster Care, we partnered with Together We Can, and we're helping them with their support of their work readiness program, as well as development of a mobile platform for that. And that's very exciting as well. So it's been an interesting journey to get to here. Obviously struggle right now because of COVID, and people are wondering what's going to happen. I see all sorts of opportunities because I know the need is only increasing. And we're just seeing the tip. The residual piece that's going to come in the next month, I think, is going to get huge. The challenge is, right, how do we get foster parents trained? How do we get kids placed? How do we decrease people's anxiety about COVID-19? Obviously, once we have vaccination, that helps everything. But until then, what do we do?
Rob, I could not agree with you more about the longer term impacts. The couple of years ago when there was the government, shutdown for just 35 days, that 35 days of seizure of a small amount of the economy, of money into the economy, particularly local around Hampton Roads, made a huge impact on the number of kids in care. And that lasted for a long time. So you and I are of the same mindset of get people in the pipeline, and not just anyone, right? We want good quality parents. And I think, from our initial meeting, that's what I took away that I really liked so much about you and the Barry Robinson Center, is the philosophy of how you train your parents. I think by and large, people come to the table to foster out of very good reasons. And I think a lot of people can fall short of that journey because they're not trained properly. And I think that's where you and Mary McGowan's organization, Attach, and other organizations come together to support people through what is a very difficult process of caring for other people's children. So tell us a little bit more about, all the things that Barry Robinson does to support, foster care and children in the community.
Well, first off, thanks for the compliments and about our focus and our philosophy. And I agree, there was sort of that connection right away, very similar. I think one of the things that we are bringing to the table is, I don't want to say it's a new viewpoint of foster care, but it is a viewpoint that I don't think has gotten enough focus and energy. And that is that when I was starting foster care work decades ago, kids were staying for most of their life. They were not heading back home. The changes now is that we're looking at getting kids adopted so they can have that permanency, or getting back home, or getting into kinship care. And that changes the dynamics of what I'm doing as a foster parent. It can be very challenging when a kid leaves, right? I connect with them. I love them, they love me. And then the pain of with that loss. But if we know that that child is going back home to what may be a better for them with their family, then we step back and say that was our job. Mm-hmm. And so our view when we look at foster parents is that they're a paraprofessional with us, that part of their job is to prepare that child to go back home. And that means working also with parents. I go back to my first 4 year into that back in the 70s when we were doing the reunification program. Even kids who didn't go back home were able to reconnect and have some connection with their biological mom or maybe biological dad, or even reconnecting with their families. Maybe it's an aunt or an uncle, maybe it's a cousin. So understanding that we're talking about takes a village, we have connections outside of our immediate family that we don't even know about. And often as we get older, those connections, that second cousin once removed that I knew about sort of in Maine, and I get to know them and we become very good friends. And I think as we start to look at that with our kids in foster care, educating our foster parents, supporting them. We also know it's very, very challenging to be a foster parent, and it can be draining. And so one of the big pushes we're making is, how do we do self-care? How do we allow times for a foster parent, even if it's simply to have a break to go to the grocery store and buy groceries, or go down and get something from McDonald's. And so when our staff have time, that's one of the things that I'm encouraging them to do. The other piece on this you asked, Audra, is about what we're doing as a whole for social welfare, for child welfare. Mm-hmm. The board of directors has been very supportive of our mission of getting back into the community. Our residential program is doing well. Our foster care program is growing, but there are other opportunities out there that can have an impact on child health. And that is, what can we do to address the poverty level in Norfolk and in Hampton Roads? So we are at the beginning stages of trying to identify what's the best way of doing that. We know that getting through school, right? Having a degree, having a work history, all right? And in avoiding having children before you're married, right? Marriage before carriage is, you do those three things, the odds of you being in poverty are about 5%. So we know that if we can focus on that and figure out a way to help with that, then we know we're going to decrease an individual being in poverty. And we know that education is going to probably have to start in the middle school, maybe even before with that, of giving folks that message that let's get through school, let's get a job. That's why we're working with Together We Can, right? And let's talk about what it means to have relationships and what it means to have a child, and being able to have those very candid discussions with people. So, and what you'll find is as kids have more information and dialogue, they're able then to make informed choices. And certainly, who are we to sit back and judge the right or wrong choice? But our job is to give them information based on that. To that end, we just brought on a new executive director of foster care, and Audra, I shared with you her resume. And
yes, impressive.
Yeah, Dr. Madison is coming to us from Pittsburgh. She's actually doing her onboarding today via Zoom. And right, and so years of history of working in the child welfare system, foster care system. So she'll be taking over foster care, but she'll also be looking at how we're going to implement the poverty issue. The other big thing we've looked at, and where a lot of our time has been the last several months, is that if we're really going to invest in helping out with social welfare, we need to probably be more embedded in the city. So we're actually exploring the opportunities to purchase property. And I would anticipate within the next 2 to 3 years, we'll have another building someplace in the downtown Norfolk area. So it's, in addition to all that, we've added intensive outpatient services for substance abuse, because when we see kids who are at risk, which our foster care kids are, we're talking about higher incident rate of substance abuse.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
The state of Virginia has really been a leader in this because of their arts program. And so they've allowed it to the fact that, well, you're never going to get rich on this. You don't have to go to the poorhouse doing this level of service. We've also been partnering with CHKD and working with the issues of the girls that they work with who've been trafficked. And we are just starting a group with them on that. We talked to Virginia Beach school systems to work with their kids who are trying to avoid residential programs or who are coming back in. That program got sort of put on the back burner with COVID and everything else going on, but I anticipate that that'll probably be kicked off in the fall. The other big thing we're doing is that, well, when we talk about foster care kids, we talk about kids in foster care. One of the concerns I have is those kids who are transitioning out. And, what's happening to these kids after they leave? Well, we know, if you're in foster care, you have about maybe a 30% chance of being successful. It's interesting, Tom Crockett's data, when they go through his program, those numbers go way up. And I know with folks who go through the tutorial program, those numbers go way up. Common thread, education.
Can you?
An opportunity for job. Yeah.
Hey, Rob, sorry. Just when you say successful, what does that mean?
Well, when I'm talking about foster kids being quote, successful, I'm talking about their ability to transition either to school or to the workplace.
Okay.
Maybe, and workplace can be the military as well.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. And so we're looking at ways to help ensure that with that transition of those kids. So historically, the Barry Robinson Center, based on the trust that is supports us, could only work with kids up to age 17. We went back to court last year and got the judge to agree to let us go to age 24. So we're actually trying to work on programs that will work with those kids 18 to 24. If it's to prevent kids from ending up in jail or substance abuse, or it's working with young adults, I said kids, right? But 18 to 24. At my age, you still get to call them kids. Okay. All right. Okay. When I was that age, you couldn't call me a kid, but I can do it now. And looking at programs that can help with that transition.
So Rob, I think a lot of our viewers don't realize maybe that, one, poverty is one of the largest drivers of putting kids in care. And it's not just that the family is poor, it's all the stressors that come along with poverty. And that also leads to self-medication and substance abuse. And the recidivism rate of, if you have come from the foster care system, you are likely to have a child that is also going to go into the foster care system. So I think what you're doing gets at the root of the root cause, right? The root of the issue. And I love that holistic approach of not just taking care of the kids in foster care, but really trying to do deep prevention work along with the kids that are moving forward without a family. Because that's the other thing I think most people don't realize is that when you age out of foster care, you don't have a support system. It's the great thing about Tom's new mentoring program, the Together We Can Foundation, is that they're trying to wrap people around these kids, build their own social support network. Because I think what it boils down to is a very simple concept. We all have that right now. That's why we were all successful in transitioning to productive adulthood. But without that, the chances that you're resilient enough to stand alone are very low. So the more supports we can put around these kids, the more opportunities to put them into permanent families, the more we can support them across their constellation of family, the family of origin, the foster family, their social network. I think the better off they will be, and the whole foster care system.
Yeah. It's interesting, Audrey, as you were talking, and we're talking about poverty. I can remember one of my classes in social policy in grad school, and the professor were talking, and somebody said something. The professor stopped everybody and said, "It's not a crime to be poor."
That's right.
And so often we criminalize poverty.
Mm-hmm.
And we look at, if given a choice that I have to steal food or my kids go hungry, any parent would take the food.
Of course.
That's what we do. We take care of our kids. And often the shame that gets placed on folks for being poor is often what leads to the substance use and for the denial part on that. So I think the more we do with, number one, removing poverty from the child welfare issue from the juvenile justice side of the track, I understand there's overlap, and that group, that intersection with that group is really where we need a lot of work. But understanding that poverty is it's just not a crime. Mm-hmm. And that for the grace of God, any of us could be there.
That's right.
So I think that, the Barry Robinson Center, with Frederick Robinson, who's our benefactor, was a devout Catholic. And when he died, when he left his estate to the establishment it was an orphanage and a trade school at that time. And we've morphed since then. But his whole focus was on helping kids who were in poverty. And while the orphans were not as many then because foster care had come into being, what the center really focused on was kids out of the depression and who were poor, and parents coming and leaving their kids there to be raised because they couldn't feed them. So that, that's part of our DNA is benevolence. And I think that our community is not aware of how important that is to the center, and that we are really making strides and plans to even try to impact that even more.
Amazing. I think it is amazing. Like, all of this work is incredible. And I think for a lot of people who do have the maybe conviction or, kind of that message on their heart that they want to do something, they want to take some sort of action, a lot of times kind of starting to hear all of this and listening to everything almost gets overwhelming, and they're like, woof, I can't, it feels like too much. So can you speak a little bit to like, what is the one simple thing? How do you take a step forward in all of this and figuring out what is my role in helping when the overall issues can feel kind of gigantic?
Well, that's a great question. The thing that came to my mind initially was, one of the things we talk about at the center is connection before correction, and understanding that it's the relationship that heals, and being able to develop that. So any of us can work with somebody else, even a friend, family member, in enhancing our connection with them, being able to sit back and listen, let them know that we care and we're available. And how many times have any of us been in a situation where we just wanted to talk to somebody, And knowing the fact that somebody was available helped us out. Old Swedish proverb, share the joy, double the joy, share the pain, half the pain. And I think that if I'm talking to folks what they can do, everybody has the ability to do that. That's simple. Walking by somebody, smiling them, putting coins in the Salvation Army can. Those are all things of giving back. If you don't have time, if you can donate money, or if you can go to the food co-op and put food on the shelf. If you want to take it a step further and you want to do more work in the field, then I think the next step is start to explore where you want to do that. So visit some of the websites or the programs. You know, the Barry Robinson Center, the Up Center, the Bear Center, you know, Families First. Those are all potential foster care agencies that people will want to look at. And to understand, I tell folks that the best way to know if a therapist is going to work for you is that after the third session, you like them. Research is pretty good on that. And so not every therapist fits with every individual. Not every foster care program is going to fit with every family. So I would say talk to a few of them, look at their website. If you can get with some of the other foster parents, talk to those foster parents. They are really good about sharing the information of their experience, and our foster parents are great. And you know, one of the things about me is everybody gets my business card and everybody has the green light to call me or text me. My foster parents are not afraid of using that communication, and to not only tell me when they have a concern, but more and more what I've been seeing with them is to say thanks and to identify some of the workers that are doing a great job. We did a questionnaire, so like a survey questions out to the foster parents about 2 weeks ago about how we were doing with COVID. And we had about 50% return, which I was very happy with. And I was I really expected to hear some things about, we need this, but it was all about you guys are doing what you can do. We appreciate the support that you've been giving us. And by the way, let me tell you about Ashley Jackson. Let me tell you about Cabria Hughes. So I think that's it. Then to even go talk to them, and then if you can go through some training, go through the Pride training. Even if you never become a foster parent, that Pride training can be really good for you. You also start to get a sense about what you're getting yourself into. And it's not going to be it may be what you envisioned. If it is, it's rare. It doesn't mean it's not the right thing to do. Our Pride trainings, I get in and I talk with the parents, and usually I have one or two folks who are just sort of there because their spouse told them to come. And we talk about that hesitancy and that it's real, and that it doesn't, and then telling them that it's okay if you select out. This isn't for everybody, and it's okay.
That is so true. That is so true, Rob. Because it's a very hard thing to take care of other people's children and emotionally invest. And the only way I think to do it right is to, when those children go home, you're completely heartbroken. And that means that you've given them what they needed. But yes, it's a hard decision, and it's not for everyone, but you don't have to foster to be a part of the solution. You can pitch in and help out.
It sounds like too, what you're saying is like, you don't have to commit to learn more. You can learn more, and then through that process, figure out if this is for you and if you want to commit.
That's great, because during the process, you may find out that I don't want to do foster care, but maybe I want to be a direct care worker.
Right.
The Barry Robinson Center. Right. Or one of my things I love to do is I'm a cook, and I just heard they have a cook position open at this place.
Yeah.
Or it just opens up the fact that, you know, I don't want that full-time thing of having a responsibility 24/7, but I can do something else.
I love that. Kind of just taking the first step in the journey and see what's there for you. And it's probably, you know, if you have that call, I would go ahead and say, like, there's a reason why you're supposed to follow that. And it's not necessarily for the destination you have in mind, but it might take you down a path that you weren't expecting. That's exactly what you want and need.
That's
so
great.
We're all here to support you in that if you are feeling that call.
And I think one of the challenges we have as an organization is to help people appreciate the job and what they're foster parent in the challenges and the ups and downs. And then as an organization, when there's those downs, It's our responsibility to be there to connect with our foster parents.
Mm.
When a kid has been taken away that for whatever reason, maybe it's not a good thing, and or gone back home, and they're frustrated with that, it's important that we're able as an organization to support our foster parents. It's very, very emotional for them. It's very draining. And I think that's what we're doing a good job on. And I think that's where foster care has to go even stronger.
Mm.
That self-care and as well as organizational care.
Yeah, it's the village.
It
Yeah.
is. Well, Rob, thank you so much for sharing with us today. We really appreciate not only your wealth of expertise in this field, but your passion and your support of getting these kinds of information sessions out there for people to learn and explore what foster care is.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity to share about the Barry Robinson Center, and hopefully this impacts on one or two folks who say, yeah, I want to give it a shot, and they seek out one of the agencies to become a parent with.
Absolutely.
I'm sure they will.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
And a big thank you for listening. Foster Care Aware is all about spreading the word about how we can help the kids who are in care in whatever capacity works for you. Tidewater Friends of Foster Care is here to help support you through the journey. Whether you want to be a foster parent, volunteer, donor, or advocate, head on over to fostercareaware.org/nextsteps to learn more.